Today we're going to talk about building custom tools. And why would you want to build custom tools is because you have a particular data set that you want to be able to have tools that interrogate just that data set. So it is allowing you to build a way of getting the LLM to kind of focus on a particular tool set. So how do we go about doing that? So starting at the Teradata MCP GitHub, if we come down through our usual piece right down into the installation instructions, and we go into the MCP server documentation, we are going to find within the MCP server documentation in the server guide that we have this customizing, being able to add your own tools and business logic. So I'm going to come into the customizing manual here. And as you read through the customizing manual, you'll notice that what we really tried to do is we've tried to be able to give you a way to build these custom tools so that you can get these very deterministic ways of injecting exactly the data you want injected into your agent. So how do we do that? Well, within the semantic layer, we've given you the ability to build a variety of different capabilities. The first one, which is custom tools, which is effectively just we're going to give you a way of being able to parameterize a piece of SQL and call that piece of SQL. We'll give you a way of being able to define predefined prompts and make those prompts available. Cubes is a little bit more interesting because Cubes is really taking advantage of the idea that we don't necessarily know how we want to slice and dice a particular data set, but if we have a table of data and we know that there's dimensions and measures within that table of data, then we can define how that looks so that the LLM will then know how to do the slicing and dicing of that particular data. A glossary is just really giving you a way of being able to define terms and definitions so that when the LLM is looking for a particular name, it knows what that name actually means within your organization. Just gives you a way of being able to have different names for the same thing across a business. And profiles we've already seen before in a prior video. Profiles has given you a way of being able to reduce the number of tools and or prompts that are actually available to the end user. So if we look at the YAML specification of a set of tools and objects, then all of these have a sort of a naming convention, and that really as long as they have a name that is descriptive and unique and it finishes in _objects.yaml, then the MCP server will pick up that file and then process the file. Now, YAML files are a wonderful declarative way of doing things, but they are not super exciting when you get the syntax ever so slightly wrong, indentation ever so slightly wrong. So just be mindful of that, be careful of that as you build this out. And what you're seeing here is examples of a sales by region tool, and in this particular case, it's the special kind of tool. It's a cube tool, but it's still a tool essentially, but it's going to be a cube type. And when we talk about a cube type, we need to give it a description, because the description is how the LLM decides whether it is going to use and execute this particular tool. You give it a piece of SQL that gets the data, and you give it the dimensions and describing what each of the dimensions are. And really what you're doing here is you're allowing these dimensions to build up effectively a where clause. So, it'd be select region product amount as total sales from sales tools, where region equals, and the LLM would then pick out, Northwest region or whatever the region is that you defined it to be. Similarly with products. So it is giving you a way of being able to, on the fly, decide whether it is going to have these filters within the projection. Similarly, measures are giving you a way of being able to do kind of expressions, so aggregation, sum, average, min, max kind of measures across a number of rows within a particular grouping. So these cubes is giving you a really interesting way of building a specialized tool across a sort of a star schema, if you will. If you think about a sort of a simpler tool would be an example here of this get top customers. You can see that the type is tool. You can see that there is a description of getting the top end customers by sales. You can see that the SQL is pretty straightforward, and the SQL has a parameter in it, and the parameter is defined as limit, and this is the description of the parameter. So the LLM will be looking to try to figure out how to define what limit is so that it can actually then fill out what the limit value is going to be here. Similarly, a prompt is going to just be a set of text that you can pre-build out. And the reason these become really exciting is because you can do lots of really interesting ways of prompting a number of different tools to be executed in a particular sequence to automate some sort of process. And glossaries, the good way to think about glossary is really just to think about it is if you have a glossary and you talk about it as customer, but the marketing people always think of them as clients and somebody else always thinks of them as buyers. Really what this is going to do is it's going to basically say whether you call it client or whether you call it buyer, we're going to redefine it back as being customer. It's really useful when you're trying to get an LLM to understand a tool and how to populate parameters in within a tool. And people sometimes use different names for the same thing. So we have seen the profiles capability to be able to reduce the different tools that you have been able to give this. And if you come down to the supported object types and attribute rules, it just gives you a description here. So if you are creating a tool type, it must be tool. You have to give it SQL, and you have to give it a description and or parameters optionally. Cube, a little bit different, has a cube type, has some SQL for the base query, and then you will have some dimensions. Each of those dimensions is described with an expression and the measures with an expression. And again, you give it a description. Within prompts, you have the ability to really define it as a prompt and then give it a bit of text. You can have parameters and descriptions and glossaries as well. And what is kind of worth looking is in the examples directory. So in the examples directory here, if you come down to the server customization, we have a whole bunch of examples for you. So, here's a churn assistant prompt because I can see that it's a prompt. I can see that they've given a description of the prompt, but then you can actually see here's the prompt. It's actually quite a comprehensive prompt, and this gives you an ability to sort of package all of that up. Similarly, here's a tool. Here's the SQL of the tool and the description of the tool, and there's a few more tools in amongst that. Another prompt here. So variety of different things that you can kind of play out. This one's probably also worth having a little bit of a look at is because the My Customer Analysis tool, you can see it has a description, has the base query within it, and then this base query has a set of parameters that it will be expecting. Similarly, you can see what a cube looks like, and you're now starting to see a lot more dimensions, a lot more measures in how these are actually being worked out. And I quite liked this business glossary here, kind of talking to what a customer is, can be a client, can be a buyer, it can be an account, is all kind of a definition. A sales rep is also a salesperson, is an account manager, is a sales agent. And you can sort of see how these are necessarily being used. So how do we kind of make these available? So if I was to take this particular file, the contents of this particular file, I'm just going to copy that for the moment. And I come in here and I'm going to make a Daniel underscore, and remember we need it to be called underscore objects dot yml YAML. So I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to add all of the code that we saw just before. I'm going to save that. Exit, and I'm going to save that. So now I have this Daniel file. Oh, golly, where's it gone? There it is, Daniel objects YAML file in my directory. And as long as I am going to run my server, I can run my server in here. I'm going to just have the all profile, and it will pick up my environment. In actual fact, I feel like I forgot to do the database URI. So I've done this before as an error. So this is good for me to keep on reminding myself that here, clear this. And if I do an export, and here's my database URI, so I forgot to do that. And now if I do my Teradata MCP server all, I should be in a good place for it to come through and pick up this particular Daniel underscore objects.yaml definition of tools. And how I will know that I have that is because when I open up my Claude desktop and it connects, we are going to be looking for a tool called My Customer Analysis, and then a tool called Sales Metrics Cube. So we can come and have a look at those two. And if I look in my, well, come in here and I should be able to scroll down and see, here's my customer analysis, this one. Oh, sorry. Let's come. I just turned it off, so that's not what I wanted to do. But this one, my customer analysis, was one of the tools. And the other tool we were expecting is Sales Metrics Cube. So if I am Sales Metrics Cube, I come down and scroll through. Did I miss it? Sales Metric Cube. Sometimes Sales Metrics Cube. There's my Sales Metrics Cube. And I have a sales analysis prompt. So a sales analysis prompt, you're not going to see in the search for tools. You're going to see it in the search for prompts. So if I go in here, and here's my sales analysis prompt. So what you're really seeing is that based on me having that Daniel underscore objects YAML file inside the directory that I started my server, and me having defined what I want my tools to look like, I was able to build out a set of custom tools. So with that, best of luck in building some custom tools. Thanks.